Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are another relatively new addition to the Aussie beer scene, but they seem to have built a very good reputation for themselves over the last couple of years. They do a variety of different styles, and I actually got a little bit of a surprise with this one when I was researching the brewery, because the name of the brewer was a little bit familiar actually. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've heard these guys do very well. It's a very popular style of beer at the moment, and one that I also enjoy quite a lot. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Definitely cool to be able to review some Aussie beers for you on the channel as well for the first time in ages. So hopefully this is another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Sydney in New South Wales, specifically the district of Botany, quite close to the airport, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Untappd Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Faded. It comes in at 8.3% ABV, and this one is a double IPA. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure whether this is going to be like a New England Hazy, a West Coast Double, or like an American IPA somewhere in between, but we just need to see how we get on with this one. It was very highly rated according to Untappd, and this is a beer that I picked up at craft beer base Mother Tree here in Osaka. They had a few different things from Untappd Brewing, but this is the one that just kind of caught my eye, mainly because I liked the artwork. And you know, if you see a new brewery, you're going to pick the beer based on the name or the artwork or whatever you like. So if there's a good selection of them there, that's what I tend to do. So yeah, definitely cool to introduce these guys to you here on the channel for the first time. And since this is an Aussie review, a big shout out to Sam Smalley, who is quite an avid follower of many European beer tubers, but it's not often that we actually get to review Aussie beers in the European craft beer circles, unfortunately, but hopefully that begins to change at some point soon. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. The Faded double IPA, 8.3% ABV from Untappd Brewing in Botany, Sydney, New South Wales in Australia. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Untappd Brewing Company. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just use the search bar in the homepage, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Aussie playlist along with many other things. Hopefully I can add to that more regularly going forward, but there are playlists there for many other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Untappd Brewing Company. So as I've mentioned to you already, Untappd Brewing are based in Botany in Sydney, which is very close to the main airport, and they were founded in mid-2016 but opened their doors in 2019. And the four people behind this company are Clay Grant, Meg Barbich, Nick Calder-Scholes, and also Liam Quinn. So Clay has a background in food catering, and he shared the idea with Meg, his wife, that he wanted to start a brewery, and she was very supportive of this. She had worked with tech startups and liked the idea of them having their own startup company. But Nick is originally from New Zealand, and he was the original head brewer at Garden Brewery in Zagreb, which you would have seen me visit just last summer actually. And this is where he met Meg and Clay, who were on holiday visiting Meg's family. She obviously has some Croatian background in there. But Liam, on the other hand, is Nick's best friend and was in the army, but also had a lot of experience in the hospitality sector. So together, these are the four guys that make up Untappd Brewing. So Clay and Meg founded the company officially in mid-2016 when they started designing the brand and started planning the company. They apparently sold their house as well to fund the startup, but they also decided that they wanted to live a more kind of fluid lifestyle, if you like, and at this point they decided to go and visit Croatia, which is where they met Nick, and he would join their venture in 2018. But the idea behind the name Untappd is that a single action can change the course of everything, and that's kind of what they want to do here. They decided they were going to go for it, make their own company, and that changed their whole kind of, basically changed their whole lifestyle, I guess you could say. But the brewery itself is located in an old paper mill, and they source their brewing equipment from the Canadian company DME. This includes a 12 hectolitre brew kit, 1,200 litres, and 6 24 hectolitre fermentation vessels. Apparently, these guys were one of the last companies to get their equipment from DME before they went into administration, liquidation, whatever. But they also have a canning line in there from East Coast Canning, and as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 270 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. So, yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about One Drop Brewing for the moment. It was a little bit of a surprise to see the name Nick Calder Scholes on this one, because obviously I knew him from when he started up, from when he was involved with the Garden Brewery, and I first reviewed them quite a few years ago actually, and he was with them for quite a long time. I had no idea that he was New Zealand. I thought he was from England actually. So yeah, that was I knew when I was researching this brewery, I recognised that name. But yeah, definitely cool to have little deja vu type things like that when you're reviewing beers, especially when you go to different sides of the world to review things. So yeah, as I say, that's everything I can tell you about One Drop Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a wee look at this beer itself. So this one is a 440ml can. The last one that we had from Mountain Culture Beer Company was a half litre. I think the other one that the other two that I have to review after this from the Aussie ones I picked up are 440s as well. So yeah, this should be quite interesting anyway. But a really nice can. I do like the artwork on this. There you can see the One Drop Brewing Company symbol there. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera with the light and stuff, but there you go. It looks very nice. But yeah, black top on the can there, 440ml like we said. It does tell you a wee bit on the back about the beer as well. With this one, they're using a new hop product called Salvo, which I think I've heard of once or twice before. I'm sure it's a liquid hop product. So it's a little bit similar to like lupulin oils and stuff like that. Basically, they extract the stuff that is useful from the hop flower, put it into a liquid form, and it gives you, it's basically better chemistry if you like, and it gets you more hop character in the beer quite easily. So yeah, this beer I believe cost me about 1,400 Japanese yen. As I've explained to you many times before, in Japan craft beer is quite expensive because they don't grow much of their own barley here, and of course they have to import the hops from the US, Australia, Canada, and I think quite a bit from Germany and Europe as well. So basically when it comes to beer making in Japan, everything is imported. But there are quite a few breweries that are starting to make their own barley and hops and things, so you never know. You might see more of that going forward in the Japanese craft beer scene. But 1,400 Japanese yen translates to roughly, what, about 12 American dollars, something like that. So that is maybe, it's about 11 euros and about 10 pounds sterling, and yeah, it will be like 110 Swedish kroner for those of you watching back in Sweden as well. So yeah, a wee bit more expensive to try this beer, but as I say, I don't often come across Australian stuff, so this was a case of fuck it, why not? But an 8.3% double IPA called Faded. This one is hopped with Citra and Nectaron. We know these hops fairly well. Citra, of course, is your classic American hop, 14% alpha acid, lovely big kind of juicy mango notes a lot of the time, a bit of a stronger passion fruity, grapefruity note as well, but also some kind of lemony, limey qualities. Nectaron is a little bit newer, a New Zealand hop, about 10-11% alpha acid normally. In my experience, it gives you a big kind of tangerine orangey quality, but also a little bit of a more oily pineapple-y note as well. So yeah, the way this beer goes together I think is going to be quite interesting. So let's get this guy out, we'll get on with the tasting and see what it has in store for us. Let's do this. So, curious to see whether this is going to be more of a New England, which by the looks of it, it will be. But yeah, I always enjoyed Nick's beers when he was brewing for Garden Brewery, so this one should, based on my experiences, be pretty damn good actually. So, anyway, as you can see, this beer quite obviously is a New England type IPA, to be honest. So yeah, we can see that the head has come out, and it's got, yeah, about 3/4 of a finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head. I wouldn't call that perfect white. You can see there's a mixture of kind of small and medium sized bubbles in this one. but it does look very, very nice. In terms of the colour of the beer, I would describe this as a little bit of a more kind of rich and deeper yellow. It has got a wee bit of a slightly ambery tint to it, but remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well, but you don't often have to care about that when it comes to New England hazy IPAs. But yeah, the level of haze on this one is kind of what you'd expect from a roughly 8%er, but the level of haze in IPAs usually depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree the yeast that you're using as well. We're talking specifically about New England IPAs, of course, because West Coast IPAs tend to use mostly barley malt. But yeah, a nice looking beer, not too much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. One or two big bubbles at the bottom of the glass, and a few little ones just going up toward the bottom of that head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice, I have to say. I do like how this one goes together, but nothing particularly surprising about it when you consider what style it is. So, yeah, let's have a wee look at the nose on this one and see what it's all about. I don't think we have to say anything more about the aroma. Let's do this. Yeah. That one smells pretty nice, actually. For me, the first impression I have of this one is it's got quite a little bit of wheaty pungency to it. Like, I'm getting quite a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose. Good little bit of kind of quite bright floral aromaticity coming out of this one, and then you've got quite an oily and kind of zesty fruit character as well, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, as I've always said, for me with New England IPAs, there are 6 elements that you should think about. So you get the farmhousey and yeasty character and the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those two are a little bit more common in American brewed IPAs in my experience. But then you've got the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bready character, and also the sweet side of things in New England IPAs. Those are the 6 sort of types of flavour that you should look for, and each one, each beer that you come across will emphasise things in a slightly different way. But yeah, this one for me is quite a wheaty leaning and floral and kind of oily fruity New England IPA actually. So yeah, I do like the aroma that this one is showing. But let's try and break it down for you and just describe it a wee bit more in depth actually. So the more actually, the now that I smell it now, I'm getting a wee bit more kind of barley malt and wheat out of it. So yeah, a wee bit more barley malt and oat, I should say, sorry. The other thing I'm noticing about this one is I think this beer, with it being from Australia, and we saw this with the Mountain Culture beer one as well, I don't think this will be in its optimally freshest condition, I guess we could say. So I think this beer, just from the aroma, I think this one is maybe about 3-4 months old, something like that. So it's not in its freshest condition, but the Mountain Culture one stood up quite well. Hopefully this one does the same. But one of the ways you can always tell about this is when you think about the oats. The creamier the oats smell and taste in a New England IPA, that usually means the beer is fresher. If you get more dryness out of the oats, quite often in my experience, that means the beer has been sitting for a little bit. You can smell a little bit of dryness from the oats in this one, I would say. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be an enjoyable beer. So yeah, with this one, I would say the backbone of this beer, if we break the aroma down for you, you've got a lovely little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust in there. I get a little touch of a kind of crackery note to it, like Jacob's cream cracker or something like this. It smells a wee bit different though. From what I understand, that the Australians do have their own malteries and stuff like this. I think they do import and export malt, but they do have bring in some from Germany and from the US as well. But the bready character in this one just smells a wee bit different. So fresh white bready bread crust, some Jacob's cream cracker in there, a little tiny bit of woodiness for me. But you've also got a little bit of you've got a little touch of like a wholemeal brown bready character as well, I would say. So wee touch of wholemeal brown bready character, fluffy white bread in there. At the back of the nose, you're getting some of that more, you are definitely getting a little bit of that more wheaty, bitey character coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, for me, the aroma in this one goes together very, very nicely. But on top of the kind of wheaty character, and I would say the wheat for the most part is giving you a kind of smooth, it sort of smoothens the beer out a little bit, but like I say, there's a wee bit of pungency in the back of the nose there. But yeah, the oaty creaminess that comes out of this one is definitely not too old. As I say, I think about 3 or 4 months maybe. But you are getting some oaty creaminess out of the beer. There is a little bit of dryness from the oaty character as well. One thing I would say about this beer too is that it's not displaying too much in the way of sweet character. There is a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. But yeah, it does have a little bit of... it does have a little bit of a kind of oaty dryness in there. So it does have a wee bit of a kind of butterscotchy, butter candy type note to it as well, which I do quite like. Aroma wise, the malty side of things goes together really nicely. On the hoppy side of things then, this one does have quite a nice bright green component. As I've told you in reviews before, there are 3 kinds of hopping when it comes to IPAs. Assuming you have a 90-minute wort boil, early addition hopping takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, more heat and more time to extract the chemicals, of course. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then you've got dry hopping after the wort boil is complete. That gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma. So the New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2, late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all 3. What that translates to in the aroma is that early addition hopping kind of dominates a little bit. You get the more kind of pine resiny and deep dank notes, whereas late addition and dry hopping give you a more kind of bright green component, the grassy and the floral sorts of things. So yeah, that's definitely what you get out of this one for me. This is more dry and late addition and dry hopping. So on the green component for me, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there, but mainly this beer has a little bit of floral character as well, but I'd say it leans more toward a kind of wet grassiness there, and I think the wet grassiness is most likely to come from the Nectaron, actually. I've always found that Citra has a wee more of a kind of pungent citrusy character to it, but I think, yeah, Nectaron is probably giving you the wet grassy character that this beer has, but there is a good little bit of bright floral character as well, like I said, but this beer kind of mellows out the more that you smell of it too, I have to say. So, I think that covers the green component. The fruity side of things is pretty much as you would expect. For me, I get quite a lot of juicy mango out of this one. You do, and that's from the Citra, of course, but behind that you do have a little bit of a more kind of pungent passion fruity character coming up there. So a little bit of pungent passion fruit in there, maybe a wee tiny hint of grapefruit, but yeah, mainly juicy mango for me. There's a wee bit of apricot. I get quite a lot of pineapple out of this one, and I think that's the Nectaron that's going to give you that. But there's also quite a wee bit of there's also quite a little bit of an orangey, tangerine note from the Nectaron as well, and I get a wee bit of a lemon-limey character from the. There is a wee bit of a lemon-limey character from the Citra as well for me. But yeah, lovely smelling beer, this one, I have to say. I'm just very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. As I always say, though, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer and think about it a wee bit before you get started. For me, that's always half the experience with craft beer. But let's do this. This one is the Faded, a double IPA, quite obviously a New England double IPA from One Drop Brewing in Botany in Sydney in New South Wales, right next to the airport. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai. Oh yeah, that's pretty damn nice, I have to say. Even at a couple of months old, that is pretty damn good. I would have loved to have seen what this beer was like in its prime, actually, but it has stood up pretty damn well. So I'm going to say thumbs up to One Drop Brewing for this, but to be honest, knowing who the brewer is, I'm not surprised. I have to say that. Yeah, that is very nice, and it's quite dangerously drinkable for an 8.3%er as well. So yeah, yeah. For me, first impression of this one is it's very smooth and it's got a creaminess to it. This one, but it feels a wee bit kind of thicker at the same time. Lovely big juicy fruity characters. The green component is a little bit less pungent than I would have thought from the aroma, but then again we do have to remember this beer is not in its freshest condition. But yeah, Very impressed with this, I have to say. This does make me curious to try a few more other things, so when I do make it back to Australia, I will need to go and film an out and about video at their at the brewery if we can. So yeah, let's kind of break this down a wee bit. As I say, lovely New England IPA. Let's take the middle third of your palate with this one. So the backbone of the beer for me, you've got a good little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust coming out there. That really does go together very nicely. This beer, though, the further into the aftertaste you go with it, toward the front of that middle third of your palate, I get a little touch of a woody note out of this one. There is a wee bit of a crackery layer there as well, but like I say, you've got that bread crusty type quality. So yeah, you've got that kind of bread crusty grainy base, the cracker on top, the wood toward the front of that middle third of your palate. But then on top of that, for me, I also get a little touch of a kind of wholemeal, brown bready sort of vibe coming out of the beer. And that really does show its head a little bit more the further into the aftertaste that you go. Above the brown bready layer, you can feel there's a nice kind of more fluffy white bready character, and that of course is going to come from the barley malt in the beer, and it's quite a fresh white bread, but like I say, to me this tastes a little bit different. Probably it's using some kind of Australian malt that I've not really come across all that often before, because usually for me at this point I can tell the difference between the German and the American malts, because the bready character is quite distinctive. But yeah, maybe I need to go down to Australia and New Zealand for a wee while and just spend some time enjoying their craft beers and seeing what they're all about. But yeah, for me, the white bready character that you get in this one's a bit different. It has a wee touch of sweetness to it, but it's also got a little bit more of a kind of dryness, and it doesn't feel quite as fluffy as the white bready character that you'll get from German malt. Actually, that's kind of how it comes across to me. But yeah, on top of the kind of barley malt layer, you can feel the wheat is there. You get a more dense and thick white bready character, and that is definitely the wheat, and you can feel it's got a lovely smoothness to it as well, actually, in that regard. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is really quite nice. But on the on top of that wheaty layer that you have, you can feel there's a little circle in the middle of your palate, and that's where the oaty character really starts to come out. Or maybe it's not right to describe it as a circle. On top of the wheaty layer, as you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel the creamy side of the oats. But what you're getting with the oats in this beer is that the further out toward the edges of your palate you go, the slightly drier they become. So yeah, you do have quite a bit of interesting character coming out of the beer in that regard. So yeah, the creamy oats in the middle and the drier oats out toward the edge. But what you'll find in the dead centre of your palate, you've got this little circle there where you're getting the alcohol coming out of the beer, and it comes across as a sort of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch type thing. And yeah, there's maybe a wee touch of like biscuit on top of the oats there as well, like a McVitie's digestive kind of biscuit. So yeah, I think that covers everything that we need to say about the middle third of your palate with this beer. But on the back third of your palate, then you're getting similar layers out of this, but of course they just come out a little bit differently. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there, and it's a white bread, but you can feel the base of the back third of your palate is like a slightly drier bread crust. And as I've always said, drier and more bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, you've got that little bit of a more kind of dry, you do have a little bit of that more kind of dry bread crusty character in there. Above that you get the cracker once again, but then you can feel the brown bready layer is there, but it's a little bit taller and a little bit more airy. Then the fluffy white bread is there too, and that layer is again taller and a little bit drier and more airy too. But then above all of these you get the wheaty character coming out of the beer, and in the back third of the palate the wheat is giving you a little bit of that kind of spicy bitiness that it can often give. So yeah, that's quite interesting too, and I'm feeling there's a wee touch of warmth coming out of this beer now that I've sipped on it for a wee while. But above everything else, you have this, you've got a little bit more yeasty character, so you can feel there's this sort of wood, kind of woody, farmhousey, crackery, bready character there, but that goes together really quite nicely. So yeah, the way this beer goes together in the malty and yeasty side of things is really quite nice actually. This is a little bit more, compared to what I remember of the of Nick's beers, the early garden brewery beers. This one is a little bit more kind of creamy actually. The more that I drink of this beer, the more that it leans toward the oaty creamy side of things. But definitely back third of the palate you can feel the flavour is taller, then as you move further forward into the middle third of the palate it just squashes together that little bit more and condenses down. So yeah, malty yeasty side of this beer is really nice. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things, the green component. So back corners of the palate, definitely a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward it gives you a wee touch of herbal character, and as you push toward the front corners of your palate it's got more of a, it does have a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it, which I really do like. So yeah, not too bitter a beer, but we'll come to that later on. Round the front curve of the palate I get a kind of wet grassiness, but it's also quite zesty at the same time. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together on this one I think is really good. So yeah, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, some nice floral aromaticity, and also a wee bit of grassiness. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, on the front third of your palate then, on the fruity side of the beer, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up, and there's got a wee touch of brown bread to it, and kind of sweet brown bread at that, but also a good little bit of white bread. Then the base of that front third of your palate is more kind of, yeah, you've got more of a bread crusty character in there. You've also got a little bit of that more, yeah, you've got a little bit of the bread crusty character in there, a wee bit of the brown bread, then the smooth white bread on top of that. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So, on top of that, with the fruity side of things, it is kind of what you would expect actually. The Nectaron is, as I say, for me it's a fairly new hop. It's maybe been around a little bit longer in Australia and New Zealand, but it's only come to Europe fairly recent. I think it was within the last year that I tried my first Nectaron beer, come to think of it. But the combination of Citra and Nectaron works really well. I can imagine that this hop would go together quite well with Galaxy as well, or Victoria's Secret. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, in the fruity side of things, there's a little touch of like a more punchy, pungent grapefruit, but then as you move further forward, it very quickly mellows to give you a more passion fruity note, and then as you move forward, it gives you a big kind of oily, juicy mango, and in front of that, you have more of a, yeah, you've got a little bit of a more kind of apricot-y, pineapple-y sort of character coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together I think is really quite interesting. So on the and when you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, for me on top of the middle part you get a nice big juicy pineapple, but then you're getting this really bright kind of tangerine-y, zesty, orangey kind of quality, and that will be the Nectaron that's giving you that. There's maybe a wee tiny hint of lime just behind the very front tip of your tongue when it blends in with the grassy esters as well. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer I think is really very nice. So this is going to be a nice one just to kind of finish off after we finish recording. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's one of the more kind of oily feeling New England IPAs that I've had in recent times. It does have a good little bit of creaminess to it as well. I would describe this beer as being at the top end of mid-bodied. Yeah, top end of mid-bodied for me. The carbonation, It's quite smooth actually, and this beer does have a wee bit of a wet, it does have a wee bit of a wetness to it, but a nice oily mouthfeel, as I've said. But in terms of the hoppy character in this one, like I say, I think this beer, it's at least 30 IBUs. It could be pushing 40 with this one. But it doesn't feel overly bitter. There is a wee bit of kind of nice floral aromaticity to it, but yeah, a little bit more of a kind of definitely a little bit more of a definitely more just a kind of bright floral character to this one, rather than being out and out bitter. The malt base, like we said, has a wee bit of dryness to it, a bit of smoothness in the middle. You do get a little touch of sweetness to this one, which you would kind of expect from a New England double, to be honest with you. But the fruity side of this beer is nice and oily. Good blend between the tropical fruits and the more zesty, oily side of things. So the citrus showing its more kind of big, bright, juicy mango side. The nectar on is really giving you a bit of an oily pineapple and a big zesty tangerine orange. So yeah, I really do like how all of this pieces together actually. But a really nice introduction to One Drop Brewing Company. We will need to check out a few more of their beers when we get the chance. But yeah, this one was the Faded, an 8.3% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. I really enjoyed this one, and definitely cool to introduce another Australian brewery to you here on the channel as well. So let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from One Drop Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. I do need to get down to Australia and visit my uncle and go and film some out and about videos, because the Australian beer scene has exploded as well over the last few years. But yeah, like I say, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out One Drop social media, and I'll see you guys again in another review very shortly. 2 more Australian reviews coming up quite soon, so keep your eyes peeled for those. Slàinte, skål, cheers.